The spacecraft entered Earth's atmosphere cloaked in a thin veil of solar refraction, silent as an owl, and only slightly less judgmental. Inside the cabin, Zarel adjusted the hem of her diplomatic tunic for the 12th time, although it was impossible to make it look less like a ceremonial curtain. She had chosen it for its neutral colors, dignified trim, and because it didn't itch, though her understanding of Earth's textile fashion was still based entirely on a mid-galactic translation database labeled Planetary Apparel 1994. Commencing touchdown, announced the onboard intelligence system in a voice suspiciously modeled after a game show host. Zarel inhaled, her long ears twitching slightly with nerves, and braced herself as the ship settled down behind a thick grove of trees half a kilometer from the human research facility she'd been assigned to. The ship's landing left only a whisper of bent grass and a few disoriented squirrels. A panel slid open. Cool earth air slipped in, fresh with moisture, spores, and the distant scent of wet asphalt. Zarel squinted through the haze and took her first step onto human soil, immediately tripping on a pine cone and sprawling across the grass in what she would later catalog as a gravity-related diplomatic greeting. She rose, brushing leaves from her hair, trying to ignore the moss clinging to her tunic like it had just found its soulmate. Her first step as Etheri observer on Earth failed, but the second was steadier. The third brought her to a narrow paved path winding toward the distant structure. The building loomed in the earth mist, rectangular, utterly uninspiring, and gently humming with a generator that probably hadn't passed inspection since the late Holocene. Zarel approached with the dignified air of someone who had memorized 3 different human handshakes and couldn't remember which one involved thumb snapping. The doors hissed open automatically, either a warm welcome or a very delayed alarm. Inside, a row of humans looked up from their various glowing screens. They were surrounded by cups with mysterious liquids, scattered paperwork, and devices that beeped when touched, usually for no clear reason. "Hi," one of them said brightly. "You must be Zoril." "Zarel," she corrected, with an E and only one cultural conquest on record. The room fell into an awkward silence. Then someone at the back chuckled. "Well, you'll fit right in." She was shown to her workstation, a table covered with wires, 2 mugs with something growing inside them, and a chair that looked like it had lost a bet. Next to it sat a human male, tallish, lightly unkempt, and sipping coffee with the resigned air of someone who had accepted chaos as a lifestyle. Dr. Samuel Carter. He gave her a half wave. "Welcome to the Department of Environmental Metrics and Inexplicably Complicated Spreadsheets." "I am honored to observe," she said. "I am particularly excited about the complex mating rituals." He paused. "You mean species interaction studies?" "Yes," she said. "That is what I said." Samuel blinked slowly, then took another sip. "Right. Well, I'm sure you'll have a very illuminating time." The morning passed with Zero attempting to understand the software by poking it. The screen flickered menacingly. When Samuel offered help, she looked at the mouse and said, "Why is the creature not moving?" He nearly inhaled his pen. At lunch, she joined the humans in the break room, an area where nutritional intake occurred around devices emitting high volumes of noise and color. She was handed a sandwich. She examined it like it might evolve. "This contains carbon compounds, yes?" "Technically," said Samuel. "Also sadness. This pleases me." Midway through the meal, a rectangular object lit up in the corner. Humans gathered around it, shouting at the images. Zarel craned her neck to see. 2 people arguing on a rooftop in heavy rain, then kissing, then running dramatically through an airport. She turned to Samuel. "This is mating behavior?" He followed her gaze. "That? Oh, that's just a rom-com." Zarel frowned. "A ritual of bonding during comic warfare?" "Romantic comedy," he clarified. "It's entertainment." She nodded slowly. "And this is how humans pair?" "Well, sort of. It's more like a story." "I see. Then the data must be cross-referenced." She made a note on her pad. "Subject exhibits fire escape acrobatics as mating cue. Status, possible injury risk." The humans returned to their screens. Zarel cornered Samuel by the coffee machine. "This individual," She pointed to the screen where the romantic couple was now slow dancing in a barn, has confessed their longing in 5 separate symbolic exchanges. Does this not indicate an imminent reproductive sequence? Samuel nearly spit coffee onto his shoes. Not exactly. I must refine my data. She tilted her head. Is there a threshold number of kisses required before attachment is confirmed? Depends on the rom-com, he muttered. I will need more samples. She narrowed her eyes. How many documentaries are there about this behavior? He stared at her, alarmed. Wait, you think rom-coms are documentaries? You said it was a story, she said. Humans base stories on truth. He groaned, rubbing his forehead. Oh no. Zarel stared at the machine again. So humans confess desire on rooftops, in airports while fleeing taxis, and with cakes? Look, it's not, he sighed. Okay, just don't model your conclusions off those. Please. She tapped her datapad. Noted, but mating cakes seem extremely effective. He chuckled, giving her a sidelong glance. You're going to be a lot of trouble, aren't you? I am told I am extremely efficient. No doubt. When the day ended, Zarel remained in the break room, watching yet another documentary unfold. 2 humans argued, fell into a fountain, and then made eye contact like gravity had shifted. She whispered into her recorder, the complexity of human rituals continues to unfold. Subject emotions fluctuate at extreme intervals. Cake may be critical to success. Outside the window, the stars blinked faintly in the dusk. Earth, with its chaotic people and passionate screen rituals, was far stranger than she had been told, and far more interesting. She couldn't wait to explore the rest. The next morning began with Zarel attempting to enter the building through a window because the door hadn't recognized her face. She considered this a sign that the building held deep-seated resentment toward her, possibly a territorial response. Samuel found her halfway through climbing over a copier. You know we have key cards for a reason, right? I assume this was an alternate entrance reserved for high-security clearance or ceremonial gymnastics. Try the front door next time. It doesn't bite. That's what they said about the sandwich. Back at her station, Zarel continued her analysis of human courtship. Her desk now featured an elaborate flowchart that began with visual contact initiated and ended with consummation or ice cream consumption, ambiguous success state. There were arrows, some glowed. Samuel leaned over. Is that a mating diagram? I have incorporated your earlier corrections. You will see I removed fire escape acrobatics as a mandatory step, though it remains a popular escalation mechanism. Why is there a stick figure holding a pie? Ceremonial dessert exchange, she said, deadpan, based on a statistically relevant sample of 13 films. He studied the chart, then pointed. What's this little guy with an exclamation mark? That denotes sudden public declarations, usually when the subject is boarding a long-distance transport vehicle. He coughed into his sleeve. This is surprisingly thorough. I cross-referenced all available media using your intranet. I've watched 54 romantic comedies in the last 7 hours. There is a troubling lack of consistency. For instance, kissing appears both as an introductory and concluding behavior. There are no clear rules. Welcome to human relationships. Zarel frowned. Your species thrives in chaos. You get used to it. Midway through their conversation, a department head entered with a clipboard and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else, including deep space. We've got a joint presentation tomorrow, he announced. Public outreach thing. Earth science students. 1 human, 1 alien. You're up, Carter. Samuel blinked. Me? You and tall ears. Zarel raised a hand. That is me. The department head grunted. Talk for 15 minutes. Say something smart about climate or carbon or whatever. Don't scare the kids. They watch internet content involving men jumping into cacti, Zarel replied. I do not believe they can be scared. After he left, Samuel groaned. I hate presentations. I have never given one, Zarel said, brightening. This is optimal. I was being sarcastic. So was I, possibly. They spent the afternoon preparing. Samuel explained the concept of slides. Zarel insisted on including graphs animated with slow zoom-ins and simulated applause. He vetoed anything that sparkled. She studied human gestures, especially the ones used during public speaking. Am I to hold my hands like a sleeping insect? Or do I do the power W? That's not a thing. It is if you do this. She spread her fingers and made a W shape with intense seriousness. It symbolizes we. It symbolizes arthritis. Still, they worked through it. Samuel gave her a crash course on tone, timing, and not reading directly from the screen like a malfunctioning AI. Zarel practiced until she could say photosynthesis without sounding like it was part of a ritual chant. That evening, back in the break room, she watched another rom-com for emotional calibration. In this one, two rivals ran a bakery and ended up locked in a freezer. By the end, they were married and opening a second location in Tuscany. I must ask, she said, turning to Samuel, if humans become trapped in refrigerated units, is that a guaranteed mating trigger? No, that's just lazy writing, she nodded. So, unlikely to occur naturally. Very well. The next morning, the presentation began inside a lecture hall shaped like a concrete walnut. Dozens of students stared at the stage with glazed expressions, their attention held only by the promise of free snacks afterward. Samuel led with data. Rising temperatures, melting ice. Something about methane plumes. It was serious and precise and mostly ignored. Then Zarel stepped forward. Greetings, youth units, she said. I am Zarel of Aetheri Prime. I have come to discuss your planet's climate crisis and its disturbing similarity to a malfunctioning sauna. The room blinked as one. You emit gases in quantities that would shame a battle cruiser. Your oceans are boiling slowly, like soup. If I were your planet, I would have already filed for evacuation rights. There was a stunned silence. Then someone laughed. Zarel tilted her head. Was that humor response appropriate? She asked Samuel over the mic. Oddly, yes. Excellent. She turned back. Also, I have learned that in many of your ritual films, love triumphs after emotional chaos, and usually cake. Perhaps Earth should attempt love with its biosphere, or at least stop trying to poison it. A few students actually applauded. Afterward, as they stepped off stage, Samuel grinned. You kind of nailed it. I believe I achieved 83% rhetorical accuracy. Also, they offered me a cupcake. That's basically a standing ovation. Zarel took the cupcake in both hands. Then I shall consider this a successful bonding ritual. Careful, Samuel said. If you're not careful, someone's going to propose by the vending machine. I've prepared for that contingency. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a miniature chart titled Human Marriage Scenarios, snack-based. He laughed. You're going to be the death of me. Only if your lifespan is compromised by extreme delight. Later, as the building lights dimmed and the staff went home, Zarel sat by the window, watching the clouds drift across the sky. She recorded a note. Day 2. Human bonding remains elusive but increasingly compelling. Subject Carter continues to exhibit kindness and confusion. He may require further observation. Also, cupcakes are effective emotional stabilizers. She paused. And if mating requires declarations in danger, I may need a rooftop. Samuel arrived at the lab Monday morning to the unmistakable sound of an orbital flute concerto echoing through the hallway. At first, he thought someone had accidentally clicked on a music file. Then he turned the corner and saw Zarel standing on a chair, aiming a small projector at the ceiling. Nebulae swirled overhead in luminous arcs. An alien harp twanged in the background with suspicious drama. Morning, he said cautiously, setting down his coffee. Are we hosting a diplomatic summit or just scaring the janitor? This is part of my new initiative, Zarel said. I have concluded that emotional engagement increases data retention. I am launching Project Atmosphere, education via ambience. Does it have to feel like I'm about to get proposed to by a sentient cloud? The clouds have not responded to diplomatic outreach. Yet, Samuel watched a tiny holographic comet zip past the coat rack and collide with a simulation of Venus, which began weeping pink steam. Is Venus supposed to cry? Only if she feels neglected. He rubbed his temples. Right. Let me know when the planets start hugging. Until then, we've got actual work. Zarel hopped down. I have made great progress in understanding your meteorological patterns. They are both complex and emotionally unstable, not unlike the protagonists of your mating documentaries. They're not documentaries, Zarel. I know, they are allegorical training exercises. She tapped her tablet. However, I have discovered a new variable I believe may be critical to understanding human bonding. Samuel braced himself. Let me guess. Socks? Close. Pets. What? Companion animals. Fuzzy quadrupeds. They appear repeatedly as emotional catalysts. I require one. You want a pet. For scientific reasons, emotional resonance, thematically appropriate story arc. Samuel took a long sip of coffee, then sighed. Okay, fine, but we're getting something low maintenance. I was thinking of a Terran wolf cub. Try again. Scaled down aquatic cephalopod? Nope. A cat? I can live with that. 20 minutes later, they stood in a local animal shelter surrounded by various species, emitting hopeful noises and occasional odors. Cyril peered into each enclosure with the scrutiny of a high-level diplomat evaluating planetary ambassadors. This one is licking its own toes, she said. High approval rating among humans. This one is staring at me with intent, possibly political. That's just a tabby, he's hungry. This one looks like it has seen war. That's probably accurate. Eventually, she selected a round, elderly, black and white cat who sneezed when she touched him. He has chosen me. He's allergic to everything. An ideal match. We shall bond through mutual confusion. Back at the lab, the cat was named Diplomat Huggles. He promptly took up residence on a stack of climate reports and refused to move, unless gently bribed with snacks or lengthy apologies. Zarel doted on him with the reverence of a royal retainer. She fashioned him a tiny cloak out of unused badge lanyards. He requires dignity. Samuel watched as Diplomat Huggles sat on his keyboard for the third time that hour. He requires boundaries. He is asserting dominance. He just sent an unfinished spreadsheet to the entire UN database. A bold ambassadorial maneuver. Throughout the week, Zarel updated her research logs with unusual enthusiasm. Day 5. Subject Carter appears increasingly tolerant of cat-induced data corruption. Our emotional exchange rate is improving. Today he shared his second muffin with me, without prompting. I believe this is a symbolic gesture. Day 6. Diplomat Huggles initiated eye contact followed by deliberate sneezing. Emotional threshold confirmed. Day 7. I have now witnessed Samuel experiencing human sadness during a film involving a dying robot. He denied crying. I offered my ceremonial shoulder. Meanwhile, their work continued. They tracked rainfall anomalies. They simulated greenhouse gas interactions using miniature drones and colored vapor. Zarel proposed that climate models be delivered via interpretive dance. Samuel responded by building a PowerPoint titled, "Why That's a Terrible Idea." But even amid graphs and debates, something intangible began to form. Slight glances, unspoken rhythms. A shared joke about a malfunctioning thermostat. The way he rolled his eyes when she mispronounced phenology, followed by her delighted repetition of the word until it became a chant. Then came the incident with the AI assistant. Zarel, having attempted to customize the lab's voice interface, accidentally gave it her own language protocols. The next morning, Samuel walked in to find the coffee machine reciting planetary hymns in Etherian hexameter. Why is the printer singing? It is attempting to express its desire for fusion. Samuel tried to ask the system for his files, only to be told in a very poetic tone, "Access denied, O weary dreamer of spreadsheets, for your soul lacks the key." "I hate this planet," he muttered. "I can reverse it," Zarel said. "Eventually, or perhaps it is time we learned the value of riddles in office life. You're going to be the death of me. You keep saying that, yet you continue to breathe in my presence." She smiled then, softly, unexpectedly. He looked at her a little longer than necessary. By the end of the week, Zarel found herself lying awake in the observatory dome, watching Earth's moon traverse the stars. She recorded one last note. Day 8. Human bonding is stranger than anticipated. It resists logic. It grows through accident, irritation, and kindness. I suspect I have begun experiencing something beyond observation. Samuel smiles when I misinterpret things now. Not because he pities me, but because he enjoys the moment. There was a pause. I suspect I enjoy the moments too. From the corner of the dome, Diplomat Huggles sneezed. The diplomatic emergency began with a sneeze. More specifically, Diplomat Huggles' sneeze. The lab's central atmospheric regulator, a sensitive, over-engineered device imported from New Zurich orbit, had recently been retrofitted to better simulate Earth's natural air quality. Unfortunately, it was also allergic to fur. One particularly robust sneeze from Huggles, amplified by Zyral's well-meaning but entirely misguided installation of a purr translator, triggered a cascade failure that temporarily reversed the oxygen-nitrogen ratio in the lab's west wing. Samuel, halfway through his coffee, choked and blinked. Why does it smell like a burnt asteroid in here? Zarel crouched beneath the table with the wheezing cat and a pile of wires that looked suspiciously like recycled earpiece antennas, peered up innocently. He attempted to initiate a treaty with the HVAC system. You turned the cat into a diplomat for the air conditioning. I believed he had leverage. He has dandruff. While emergency ventilation corrected the problem, the two of them were reassigned to temporary workspaces in the botanical dome. Zirel welcomed the relocation. She liked the plants. They didn't question her diagrams or argue about the merits of interpretive climate forecasting. Samuel, on the other hand, looked warily at the 8-foot-tall glowing vine labeled caution. Telepathic spores may cause existential dread. Tell me again why this place is funded. Because bureaucracy fears botany, Zarel said, adjusting her light visor, and also because some of your plant species have threatened legal action. He shook his head and scrolled through data on a portable screen. Let's just finish this atmospheric shift model. You handle humidity, I'll do thermal flux. You trust me with humidity? She asked with mock offense. You installed a sentient umbrella last week. I figure nothing worse can happen. It's not sentient. It's emotionally aware. It cried during a thunderstorm. It was moved. Despite the strange surroundings and the occasional vine trying to nest in Zarel's hair, the work proceeded smoothly until she asked a question that derailed everything. Samuel, she said, glancing up from her monitor, how do humans choose? He looked up. Choose what? Mating partners. He immediately made the kind of noise one makes after inhaling their own tongue. You can't just ask that. You have watched 12 separate romantic comedies with me. You explain the symbolism of gift-giving rituals, the function of rooftop monologues, and the importance of unspoken glances, but none of it explains the selection algorithm. It's not an algorithm, he said, face already red. It's complicated. Zarel narrowed her eyes. So, it's chaos again. Not chaos, it's just, look, people meet. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they fall in love in elevators or while hiding from radioactive baboons. Sometimes they don't. Statistical anomalies. Welcome to humanity. She considered this gravely. Does physical symmetry matter? Sometimes. Biological scent markers? Okay, that one's real. Do humans bond over shared trauma? Far more often than they should. And jokes? His mouth quirked. Definitely jokes. Then perhaps, she said thoughtfully, we are compatible. He stared at her. She stared back, perfectly calm, like she had just asked about the soil pH in Mars-grown carrots. Are you saying you're interested? I am saying that if mating requires mutual appreciation, humor, and the occasional incident involving confused plumbing, then we are well within parameters. Samuel tried to breathe. You really have no filter. It was removed as part of my observational training. Unfiltered dialogue yields greater data fidelity. He stood abruptly, knocking over a fern that hissed and slithered away. I need air. You are currently surrounded by 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. I meant a walk. She blinked, then nodded. Should I accompany you? No, I think I need to recalibrate alone for a minute. After he left, Zirel sat still for a long time. Diplomat Huggles, who had snuck into the dome via a ventilation tube, plopped into her lap and began purring loudly. She looked at him. Did I err? The cat sneezed again. She frowned. That does not answer the question. Back in the main building, Samuel wandered the hallways in a daze. His mind replayed the conversation on a loop. We are well within parameters. What did that even mean? Was she serious? Was this a joke? Was she studying him? Was she flirting? Was she, God forbid, both? He found himself at the vending machine, staring at rows of prepackaged sandwiches and suspiciously glowing protein bars. A familiar voice interrupted his spiraling. If you are considering a snack-based proposal, I suggest the triangle-shaped carbohydrates. They appear symbolic. He turned. Zarel stood there, holding a tablet and looking far too calm. I thought you were giving me space. I calculated your likely trajectory. You rarely resist synthetic cheese. He ran a hand through his hair. Zarel, I don't know what to say. Then allow me. She stepped closer. I am unfamiliar with many human customs. Your mating behaviors are complex and contradictory, but I do understand curiosity and affection and the desire to sit near someone even when there is no data to exchange. He met her gaze, soft and steady. So this isn't an experiment to you? I have observed. I have concluded. I wish to proceed, if you are amenable. He let out a breath and laughed, soft, incredulous. You really do make it sound like a field report. She tilted her head. Would you prefer a sonnet? I'd prefer dinner. Her ears twitched. Is that a mating step or a nutritional requirement? He smiled. Both. And with that, they stood by the vending machine in silence, watching diplomat Huggles attempt to crawl inside. Samuel sat across from Zarel at the tiny table in the dim corner of their favorite late-night diner, the hum of starship traffic filtering through the panoramic windows. The menu was holographic, shimmering with choices that would have seemed like wizardry to humans a century ago. But tonight the food seemed secondary. The air between them carried a curious mixture of nerves and warmth, like when a star is just beginning to glow, but hasn't yet burst into full light. So, Samuel began, fingers drumming lightly on the table. After all the protocols, the experiments, and the near-disastrous HVAC incidents, where do we go from here? Zarel's long ears twitched, betraying an expression Samuel had come to recognize, amused contemplation. From observation to participation, she replied, I have learned much about human unpredictability, which may be the best lesson of all. He smiled. Yeah, unpredictability seems to be your specialty too. That is a fair assessment, she said with mock humility. I have developed what you might call affection for you, for humans, for your irrational, chaotic, spectacular ways of living and connecting. Samuel felt a smile spreading uncontrollably. Funny thing, I was just about to say the same for you. Diplomat Huggles, now sporting a tiny bow tie that Zarel had crafted, jumped onto the table with all the dignity a cat can muster after nearly knocking over a star map projector. He gave a precise sneeze and looked expectantly between them. Looks like we have an ambassador here who supports our alliance, Samuel said. Maybe the universe isn't so huge and lonely after all. Zarel reached out and let her fingers brush his hand, a subtle but meaningful touch that spoke volumes without words. You once told me humans do not mate this often, and I laughed at your astonishment. But now I understand. It's not the frequency that matters. It's the connection, the choices, the moments, the small acts of kindness and humor that build something greater. Samuel's eyes softened. So, does that mean I get to be your choice? Your choice has been confirmed, she said, eyes sparkling. And if I may be bold, I propose we explore this experiment together, without observation or hypothesis, but with all the unpredictability we can muster. He laughed, genuine and full of hope. Deal, but I'm warning you, sometimes I'm even less predictable than your telepathic plants. She tilted her head, amused. Challenge accepted. Outside, the twin moons of Earth and Etheria hung low, casting gentle light over a world where the boundaries between alien and human, observer and participant, were fading into something new. Somewhere nearby, a robotic waiter delivered steaming cups of synthetic coffee, and the faint sound of laughter echoed. Diplomat Huggles sneezed once more, sealing their quiet covenant of curiosity and affection. Together they faced the unknown, not as strangers, but as partners, ready to write a story as unpredictable and beautiful as the stars themselves. Kale's boots clicked against the polished floor of the Zarnathian council chamber, a sound almost swallowed by the vastness of the room, but sharp enough to draw a few glances. The air was thick with tension, Or maybe it was just the lingering scent of exotic biofluids from the alien delegates, a mixture of something like citrus and burnt ozone. He adjusted the collar of his jacket, the fabric a patchwork of earth cotton and synthetic fibers scavenged from star freighters, and tried to ignore the curious stares pinned to his back like cosmic darts. "Ah, the human finally graces us with his presence," sneered Thalcrin, a Valari noble with skin that shimmered like liquid mercury and eyes that glittered with ancient arrogance. His long ears, tapered and adorned with crystalline piercings, twitched in amusement. "Tell me, Kale, how does it feel to be so fragile? Your species fascinates us, like a child fumbling with plasma tools, amusing, but ultimately useless." Kyle's gaze slid to the crowd, catching glimpses of the assembled elites, beings with scales that glowed faintly in the dark, others whose limbs seemed to ripple with translucent muscles, and some whose very presence distorted light around them. All had one thing in common: their expectation that humans were a primitive footnote in galactic affairs. "Well, if we're fragile," Kyle said, voice calm but with an edge that could cut through titanium, "then you're about to see how easily fragile things break things you never expected." A murmur rippled through the room, the kind that happens when the fire alarm goes off during a formal dinner. Unexpected, disruptive, and impossible to ignore. Thalcrin raised a silvery eyebrow. "Is this bravado or delusion? Either way, it's charming." Kale cracked a half smile. "Maybe a bit of both. But I'm not here to entertain. I'm here to remind you that humans aren't defined by appearances. We've got scars beneath our skin and fires behind our eyes. You think strength is muscle and tech, but sometimes it's just stubbornness wrapped in an angry look." A snort escaped from a nearby delegate with 4 arms, who whispered to his neighbor, "Humans and their tempers, like toddlers throwing tantrums in zero gravity." Kale caught the comment and tossed back, "Better a tantrum than a tantrum programmed by an outdated AI, right?" A few chuckles echoed, breaking the cold atmosphere just enough to loosen the stifling formality. At that moment, a holographic display flickered to life behind the council podium, projecting a swirling map of star systems, some marked with warnings, others flashing red like irritated fireflies. "The human reach," the caption read, and the stars around Earth's sector pulsed in defiance. "You speak of human resilience," Thalcrin said, voice dipping into mockery. "Yet your colonies barely survive skirmishes with minor pirate factions and local fauna that would make a Valari cringe." Cal's ears twitched, a habit he'd never quite outgrown, and he replied, "Pirates? Fauna? Let's just say we've faced monsters with more teeth than your whole council combined, and we didn't just survive, we thrived." From the corner, his companion Rix, the sarcastic cyborg with one eye that occasionally glitched into static, rolled his mechanical shoulder and muttered, "If you'd stop bragging, maybe those monsters would quit trying to eat you." Kale gave Rix a playful shove. "You'd rather be eaten than listen to me? That's cold even for you." Rix's eye flickered. "I'm built for cold and terrible jokes." The alien woman from the Valari Dominion observed from the sidelines, her own long ears framing a face that was both sharp and hauntingly beautiful. Her eyes, a shade of deep amethyst, studied Kyle with something like amusement, and perhaps the faintest flicker of respect. Her name was Solara, an envoy known for her cunning and cold logic. She was the kind of opponent who smiled while delivering the death sentence. Kale caught her glance and grinned. "Not much of a talker, huh? You know, most aliens would have tried to interrupt me twice by now." Solara's smile was a slow curve, almost conspiratorial. "I prefer to listen. Words reveal more than weapons, especially when the words come with a glare like yours." Kale's eyes narrowed, but he couldn't suppress a laugh. "Yeah, well, I've been told my glare can dismantle entire peace negotiations." "And here I thought it was your stubbornness," Solara teased, stepping closer, her voice low enough to be a private joke. "Both are dangerous." Before the moment could stretch any further, a booming voice interrupted the subtle exchange. "Enough!" barked High Chancellor Varn, a towering figure cloaked in robes that shimmered with nanofiber threads shifting like liquid metal. His presence was like a supernova, impossible to ignore and full of raw power. This council will not descend into petty squabbles. We gather here because the galaxy stands on a precipice. Humans, Valari, and all others, our survival depends on cooperation, not contempt. Kale folded his arms, hiding a smirk. Cooperation was a nice idea, but he knew better. Out here, survival meant being ready to fight with everything you had, including your glare, your stubbornness, and the odd quip that caught your enemy off guard. As the council debated threats from the outer rim, rogue AIs, marauding warbands, and an ancient virus capable of rewriting DNA, Kale's thoughts drifted. He wasn't here just to prove a point. He was here because somewhere in the chaos, something bigger was coming, something that would make all their squabbles seem trivial. And when it came, they'd need more than muscle and tech. They'd need fire. Kale's long ears twitched as if sensing that fire stirring beneath the surface of the council chamber, waiting for the right moment to ignite. Rix leaned close. Hey, human, if you keep staring like that, you're going to give everyone a headache. Kyle smiled, the fierce calm settling in his eyes. Good. Maybe then they'll finally listen. And in that moment, the galaxy held its breath. The corridors of the Zarnathian Council complex hummed with a low mechanical drone, part machinery, part ancient alien resonance. Kyle navigated the maze of twisting hallways with practiced ease, ears flicking at every subtle sound. A whispered conversation behind a shimmering door, the faint hiss of airlocks cycling, the distant clatter of impatient boots. His companions trailed behind him, Rix's one mechanical eye glowing faintly as it scanned their surroundings, and Solara moving with graceful precision, her long ears twitching as always, betraying a nervous energy she didn't often show. So, let me get this straight, Rix muttered, voice dripping with metallic sarcasm. You're going to waltz into the Council's forbidden archives, find some dusty old secrets, and save the galaxy. All before dinner? Cal grinned, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards. Sounds about right, except maybe the dinner part. I'm not sure anyone's serving human food here. If they are, I'm staying far away. Solara raised a single brow. You think your Earth food is worth avoiding? I once tasted a Valari delicacy that nearly stopped my heart. Twice. Rix chuckled, a noise like static with rhythm. If you ask me, the galaxy's tastiest delicacies all come with a side of potential death. Kyle's ears twitched again, and he glanced at Solara. So why are you coming with us? You could have stayed safe in your shiny chambers. Solara's eyes darkened for a moment, a flash of something Kale couldn't quite read. Because this isn't just about humans or Valari or any of the other races. It's about survival. And because someone has to make sure the Council doesn't accidentally press the self-destruct button during a disagreement. Rick snorted. That would be the best diplomatic tactic ever. Their banter faded as they reached a heavy rune-inscribed door marked with symbols that pulsed faintly with blue energy. Kel produced a small device from his jacket, an old Earth relic retrofitted with alien tech, and pressed it against the lock. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber that seemed to stretch into infinity. Shelves stacked with glowing data crystals and ancient relics humming with forgotten power. This is it, Kyle whispered, stepping inside. The archives. Solara moved with fluid steps, scanning the rows of data crystals. They say this place holds records that could rewrite galactic history, including secrets some would kill to keep hidden. Rix's eye flickered nervously. Great. Nothing like digging into the past to get everyone wanting to assassinate you. Kyle smirked. No risk, no reward. He selected a crystal etched with swirling patterns and slotted it into a nearby reader. A holographic interface sprung to life, bathing the room in soft light. Images, star maps, and texts in dozens of alien languages appeared, layers of information cascading like a waterfall of knowledge. What exactly are we looking for? Solara asked, stepping closer. Kyle's gaze hardened. Proof. Proof that humans are more than what the Council thinks. Evidence of our resilience, of the battles we've fought in silence. If we can show them that human strength isn't just physical, but born of endurance, pain, and will, maybe they'll stop treating us like galactic pets. Rix rolled his metallic eye. Or they'll just call it human stubbornness and ignore it. Maybe, Kale admitted, But stubbornness has kept us alive this long? As they sifted through the archives, a pattern began to emerge. Records of hidden human outposts surviving on hostile planets, fighting off creatures with biology that defied known science. Stories of lone human warriors outsmarting entire alien hunting parties. Tales of ancient Earth warriors who had once repelled invaders with nothing but sheer grit and makeshift weapons. Solara's lips twitched in a rare smile. Your people are better at hiding their strengths than any of us expected, Cal chuckled. That's because showing weakness is a survival tactic too. If you don't appear threatening, you don't get targeted. Rix beeped softly. Sounds like an excuse for not upgrading your arsenal. Hey, the glare is my best weapon, Kale said, narrowing his eyes dramatically. Solara shook her head, amused. I might start believing that if you weren't so good at backing it up. Suddenly an alarm blared, sharp and insistent. The archive's security system had detected unauthorized data access. The room's soft blue glow shifted to angry red. Guess our party's over, Rix quipped, powering up an arm cannon that hummed with energy. Kale grabbed a handful of data crystals. Time to make an exit before the council decides to send security with stun nets. Solara's long ears flattened briefly, signaling urgency. Follow me. I know a way. They darted through the endless stacks, alarms echoing behind them. The corridors seemed to close in as automated drones emerged, their blinking eyes scanning for intruders. Kale fired a plasma pulse that set one drone spinning into a pile of useless circuits. Rix hacked another, turning it into an ally that began broadcasting false security alerts to distract the others. Nice work, Tin Can, Kale said with a grin. Solara led them to a narrow maintenance shaft, just wide enough for the three of them to squeeze through. The air was stale, filled with the hum of cooling systems and the faint scent of recycled oxygen. Cal paused, catching his breath. You ever get tired of all this running and dodging? Rix snorted. Not when it keeps me from listening to your monologues. Kyle laughed. Fair enough. As they emerged outside the council complex, the stars stretched above them in a vast, glittering tapestry. Earth was a small blue dot somewhere out there, a world underestimated, overlooked, and soon to be reckoned with. Solara glanced at Kale. Your fire is real, human. Just be careful it doesn't consume you. Kale's eyes softened, but the fierce spark remained. If it does, I'll burn the whole galaxy down with it. They exchanged a look, half challenge, half promise, as the night stretched endlessly ahead, full of unknown battles, hidden dangers, and a stubborn hope that could not be extinguished. The shuttle hummed softly as it descended toward the sprawling human colony on Yara 7, a rugged planet far from the polished halls of the Zarnithian Council. Kyle leaned back in his seat, watching the rocky landscape slip past the viewport. Jagged peaks, vast deserts with shimmering dust storms, and scattered domes glowing faintly with artificial life. The colony was a stubborn patch of human tenacity in a universe that often forgot them. Rick sat across from him, filling with a small gadget that emitted intermittent sparks and a faint smell of burnt circuits. You know, if your glare had a sound, it'd probably be a constant, low buzz, like a mosquito trapped in your helmet. Kyle smirked. Better than sounding like you. More like a malfunctioning toaster with delusions of grandeur. Rix's mechanical eye flashed red. Hey, I'm an upgrade, not an appliance. Solara sat quietly beside them, her long ears flicking occasionally as she observed the colony below. You humans build these places in the worst spots imaginable. Hey, Cal said, if it was easy, everyone would be here. Rix groaned. That sounds like a motivational poster. Kale laughed. Exactly. I'm full of those. The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud near the colony's central hub, a cluster of domes connected by flexible tubes, a blend of rugged engineering and adaptive biotech that kept the settlers alive against Jara 7's harsh climate. A handful of colonists awaited them, some rough-faced veterans with hands calloused from years of mining rare crystals, others young and bright-eyed with the hope of starting something new. Kyle, shouted Mira, the colony's leader, striding forward with a grin that didn't quite hide the exhaustion beneath. Her hair was streaked with silver, and her eyes held the weight of too many winters. Finally decided to grace us with your presence. The council won't stop buzzing about you. Kale shook her hand firmly. Had to make a grand entrance. You know me, Mira laughed. You and your grand gestures. The council's still not convinced humans belong at the big table. They see us as expendable, as if our stubbornness is a bug, not a feature. Solara stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. That's why we're here, to remind them what humans truly are, to show that beneath the surface, there's a fire that won't be snuffed out. Rix rolled his eye. And maybe get a good meal that doesn't come out of a synth pack. Mira shook her head but smiled. Come, I'll show you what we've got. Inside the main dome, the colony buzzed with activity. Scientists monitored bioscanners tracking native fauna, miners prepared their gear, and engineers tinkered with energy converters that hummed softly. Cal wandered through the crowds, absorbing the atmosphere, a mix of hope, grit, and that familiar human defiance. Here's where the magic happens, Mira said, leading them to a lab filled with glowing consoles and flickering holograms. We've been developing a new bioweapon. Nothing aggressive, just enough to keep the local predators at bay. Cal raised an eyebrow. Bioweapon sounds serious. Not as serious as the local predators, Mira replied with a grin. Imagine something with 6 legs, 2 brains, and a nasty disposition. And it's got a taste for anything organic, including colony supplies. Solara chuckled. Sounds delightful. Rix tapped a console. If only it had a weakness for terrible jokes. Cal smirked. You're really pushing for extermination, aren't you? Mira nodded toward a holographic display showing the creature's DNA sequence. We've managed to isolate a gene that, when triggered, makes the predators lethargic. But deploying it requires precision. Cal studied the display. Sounds like you're playing with fire. Fire's what we're good at, Mira said, her eyes gleaming. Besides, it's not just about defense. It's about proving we can survive, that humans can adapt and thrive where others wouldn't dare. Solara leaned in. And what about the council? What's their take on your efforts here? Mira's smile faded slightly. They want results, fast. They see this colony as a test. If we fail, they write us off. If we succeed, maybe we get a seat at the table, or at least a chair in the waiting room. Cal folded his arms. Sounds like the council's still holding on to old prejudices. Old and stubborn, Mira agreed, but stubbornness can be a strength too. Rix tapped his chin, or a reason to never admit you're wrong. The group laughed, the tension easing. Even Solara's sharp features softened. As evening fell, the colony's sky turned a deep indigo, stars twinkling like distant promises. Cale stood outside, gazing upward. You ever wonder why humans keep pushing forward, even when the odds are stacked against them? Mira joined him, her voice quiet. Because giving up isn't in our DNA, and because someone has to light the fire when everything else goes dark. Solara nodded thoughtfully. That fire is what scares the council, not because it's dangerous, but because it's unpredictable. Rick smirked. Unpredictable and irritating? Like a mosquito in your helmet. Cal laughed, the sound mingling with the night breeze. Maybe, but it's our fire, and it's going to change everything. The council chamber was an imposing structure, a blend of shimmering alloys and organic architecture that seemed to breathe with quiet authority. Kyle's footsteps echoed against the polished floor as he followed Solara through winding corridors that twisted like the roots of some ancient cosmic tree. The longer he walked, the more the familiar scent of ionized air and recycled atmosphere reminded him that he was far from Earth, or any place where human troubles felt small. So, Kyle muttered, glancing sideways at Solara, you're really sure about this? Walking straight into the lion's den with nothing but a glare and a bunch of fancy data crystals? Solara's long ears twitched in amusement. That glare of yours has more power than you think. Besides, it's not like we're unarmed. You've got your stubbornness, Rix has his circuits, and I have these, she added, flicking her fingers to reveal delicate energy filaments weaving under her skin, glowing faintly. A gift from the Valari. Nothing deadly, more like a cosmic tickle. Rix rolled his mechanical eye. I'm offended. My tickle could probably disable half the council's security systems. Sure, Kale said, smirking. And I'm the galaxy's greatest diplomat. Maybe you should try diplomacy sometime, Solara teased. They entered the main hall, a vast amphitheater ringed with seats where the alien elites gathered. Long-eared figures in elaborate robes whispered behind their hands, casting curious glances at the human among them. Kyle caught one elder's eye and held his gaze, steady and unflinching. The silence stretched, thick as a nebula, until the council leader, a towering figure with eyes like liquid crystal, spoke. Human Kyle, your audacity is noted. You claim your kind holds strength unseen, yet you walk among us without armor or weapons. How do you justify this claim? Kale's smile was slow, deliberate, because strength isn't just about armor or weapons. It's about the fire inside, something you can't see but feel. It's in every scar, every battle fought in silence, every moment when giving up was easier, but I didn't. A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. The leader raised a hand. Proof, then. Show us this fire. Solara stepped forward, producing a data crystal that projected holograms of the human colony on Jara 7. Scenes flashed, miners braving toxic storms, children laughing in makeshift playgrounds, warriors training with makeshift weapons against alien beasts. The images told a story of resilience and hope. Rix chimed in. We've also uncovered records of human victories, small but fierce, against invaders and predators, not because of superior tech, but sheer will. The council members exchanged skeptical glances. One elder with long silver ears muttered, Still, it seems reckless. Kyle grinned. Maybe, but reckless is better than irrelevant. Suddenly, the chamber's lighting flickered and alarms blared. A shadow flickered at the edge of the room. A rogue faction opposed to the human presence was making a move. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Kyle's eyes narrowed. Looks like we're about to prove that fire. Energy blasts lit the air, but Kyle dodged, his reflexes sharp. Solara's energy filaments flared, weaving defensive barriers that shimmered like liquid glass. Rix hacked into the chamber's systems, turning security drones into allies. Amid the firefight, Kyle locked eyes with the leader again. You see, strength isn't just muscle or tech, it's in standing firm when everything tries to tear you down. The rogue faction was pushed back, retreating into the shadows. Silence reclaimed the chamber, broken only by heavy breaths and the soft hum of energy shields. The leader nodded slowly. Perhaps we underestimated you. Kyle's grin returned, wide and unapologetic. Underestimate humans at your own peril. Solara's ears twitched with a rare smile. I told you, your glare is more powerful than any weapon. Rix beeped in agreement. Yeah, who needs guns when you've got attitude? As the council members settled, the atmosphere shifted, from skepticism to a grudging respect. The fire Kyle spoke of had been ignited, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. Kyle stood on the balcony overlooking the sprawling cityscape of the capital planet, its neon spires piercing the twilight like stubborn stars refusing to fade. Behind him, the council chamber hummed quietly, no longer a place of cold judgment, but a crucible where alliances were forged and old prejudices burned away like cosmic dust. The air was thick with the scent of ionized metal and faint traces of jasmine from the hydroponic gardens below. Thought you'd be out celebrating somewhere, came a voice from the doorway. Kale turned to see Solara leaning casually against the frame, her long ears twitching with amusement. You expect me to relax after what we've been through? I'm a human. Relaxation is a myth like faster-than-light travel without consequences. Solara grinned. Speak for yourself. I'm just here for the snacks. Rix rolled in behind her, his mechanical eyes scanning the room like a caffeinated librarian. And I'm here to make sure you don't accidentally set anything on fire. Again, Kale chuckled. You guys are the best kind of trouble. The council chamber doors opened, and Mira stepped out, her expression softer than the last time they had met. The vote passed. Humans are no longer seen as weaklings or expendables. We have a seat, a real one, at the table. Kyle's smile was slow and steady, like a flame finally finding oxygen. So all that stubbornness paid off, Mira laughed. It wasn't just stubbornness. It was your angry glare that convinced them. Who knew a human scowl could be more effective than a plasma rifle? Rix beeped in agreement. Clearly, we should market that glare. Kale's furious stare, one look and you're convinced. Solara snorted. Add it to the list of human weapons. Cal rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. Maybe I should trademark it. Mira's smile faded for a moment, replaced by a look of quiet pride. You've changed more than just the council. The colony on Yara 7 thrives now. The biodefense systems are fully operational, and the miners report fewer predator encounters. Solara's ears flicked. I heard the native creatures are reconsidering their dinner plans. Kale grinned. Good. They should learn fear, preferably of my glare. Rix clicked a button, projecting a hologram of the colony. Vibrant green domes pulsed with life amid the rugged terrain. Human persistence, for the win. Cal's gaze softened as he watched the tiny lights flicker. I've learned a lot on this journey. That strength isn't just about muscle or tech. It's about standing firm when the universe tries to knock you down. It's in the fire you keep alive inside, even when everything feels cold and dark. Solara stepped beside him, her energy filaments glowing faintly in the dim light. And that fire? It's contagious, Mira nodded. You've reminded us all that strength takes many forms, that even the smallest flame can ignite a supernova. Rix's mechanical eye whirred. So, what's next? World domination? Galactic peace? Or maybe just a really good meal? Kyle laughed. Let's start with dinner. After that, who knows? Solara raised an eyebrow. Dinner with humans? Should we bring hazard pay? Kyle shook his head, smiling wide. Nah, just bring an appetite for stories and maybe a little more stubbornness. The stars blinked overhead, distant yet somehow within reach. Cal knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with fire in his eyes and friends at his side, he was ready to face whatever the galaxy dared to throw. Because now they all knew, humans weren't just strong, they were unstoppable, and his angry gaze had changed everything.